Okay, so as Jim stated, this is a wrapper around the Acumatica Avalara integration. So the first good news is this is the setup. If you can plug your information in for Avalara, you can plug your information in for TaxJar. It's simply a different, obviously, account and license key and URL. If we test this, we can see that it connected to Avalara successfully, and the version is AnyTax TaxJar. That's because we're intercepting all of that. So a lot of people ask, so I'm just going to start with TaxJar. If you've never used TaxJar, pretty easy. I can set up my states, add a state, select a state. Real simple stuff. I'm going to add Alabama. Got to do it monthly. This is my Alabama ID and everything else. Okay, great. I guess the established nexus this month, great. Okay, so we're gonna save that. Okay, so now I've added Alabama. I can put that in slow motion if anybody needs, but it's really that easy. Okay, so I got myself a key from TaxJar. I came over to Acumatica. I used that key to put it in here. I gave it my URL, and I tested it, and it tested good. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go over to Acumatica. So let's just, for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to take this order here, and we're just going to copy it. Let's copy this order. There's actually an invoice. You won't see anything, obviously, in the tax dashboard when you're doing sales orders because they're just sales orders. It's calculating this tax, but it's not saving it anywhere. It's just calculating. So what we're going to do is just add an invoice. Let's paste this invoice in. And let's go to my dashboard. Okay, so here's my dashboard. I'm just going to go to my transactions so you can see, okay, May 3rd was my last transaction. Okay, this is the test system. Okay, so what we have here is $0 shipping. Okay, let me get rid of that line. It doesn't mean anything anyways. So what do we got here? All right, so what we have here is a $100 order, no sales tax, okay? And everything, as far as Acumatica is concerned, is using the Avalara tax zone. As you can see, my Avalara tax zone is actually given a description of TaxJar, but I have to call it Avalara and map it to the Avalara stuff. So what we have here is order all set up. And here we go, $80 taxable. So we have $80 taxable, $20 exempt, and all I'm going to do is go ahead and save this. And at this point, I've got a tax total now. My tax is my apparently 6.25% for this. It was $5 on the 80, right? And so it did not tax the $20. Great. Okay, so there we have. And if I come back here and I look at my transactions,
Matt, got a question for you on this too. What is the trigger for Acumatica to calculate the tax based on the address? I know with Avalara you have to have the ship via filled in with something before it'll calculate the taxes, or with the Avalara plugin. Is that the same? Is the trigger the same?
See, that's the thing. Like, I'm in an invoice that doesn't have a shipment, and what it's actually going to do in that instance is go to the customer and look at the ship to the customer. So even though this transaction actually it does not have a shipping address in this transaction. It's just an invoice. What it's doing is, because it doesn't have that, it falls back to here, right? So, yeah, it has to have that, and it has to have that. Well, I'll have to double check this. When you have a sales order and shipment, the sales order to shipment process seems to really like having a ship via before it does it. So a ship via code in the sales orders, but that's not to send it to post the text. That's just to calculate.
So it
Does that
does
answer the
seem.
question?
I think so. What I'm trying to understand is the exact triggers because we got to change our code on our side. And so if it's the same, then that's straightforward. So the way that I understand the current one works is that it will not calculate the taxes unless we have a location in there and we fill in the ship via field.
That's right.
Otherwise, it will not calculate it. Now, TaxJar sounds like will calculate even if you don't have shipping location, the ship via field, and it will default to the accounts delivery. Does the Avalara one currently do that, or is that
that's not Avalara. It's actually the call. It's the call from Acumatica. Acumatica is not doing it.
Matt, can you repeat that? Because can everyone else be on mute? Because it was really hard to hear him.
You're breaking up,
Sorry.
too, Tricia.
Can you guys can you guys hear me?
Yeah, somebody else had some noise going on in the background too, and it was harder to hear you a second ago, or your last statement there.
Avalara is not making that decision. Acumatica is deciding not to even ask the question.
Got it. Not to ask what though, or
not to ask Avalara. It doesn't even go out.
Got it.
So if those things aren't filled in Acumatica, it's not bothering to even ask. If that was the question.
Got
it
it.
has
So
nothing to do with TaxJar. It's all Acumatica.
Got it. So does the ship via still, if we have a location, does the ship via still need to be populated for the tax to calculate?
I think it does.
Okay.
In fact, in newer versions of Acumatica, I need to tell you this, because you may have a data cleanup item. If Acumatica's customer, even if this is, I'm not going to talk about right or wrong with Acumatica's code. The shipment has a shipping address, like a place to deliver, but the customer does not. The new validation as of, I want to say, 2017 R2 and possibly later versions, it's actually checking the customer for a shipping address, even though it's not going to use it. And if you don't have a shipping address in the customer, Acumatica, before even trying to call Avalara, throws an error. So if you don't have addresses, it could say the street address of A in the state of in any state or country. It just seems to want to have something there, even though it's not going to use it. It's probably something I'll ticket because not everyone fills in the customer, but they fill in the sales order and the shipment. So
okay,
but
all right.
We can work through those things. In fact, there's one more thing that's interesting, and that is, I think Avalara, if you have an exempt customer, you have to go into Avalara to mark them as such. TaxJar just opened up something in the last, I'd say 2 weeks, that is going to enable us to actually go to the customer in Acumatica, mark them as exempt here, and that will send a web service called a TaxJar, so that even though it's a taxable address, it will send the gross sale up to TaxJar, not tax it, but book it as a sale, which is important if you're doing auto filings and you don't want to keep going back into Avalara to manage who is exempt and who is not. That'll be nice. Sorry, I'm redoing this invoice because I did it in a past period and I want it at the very top so people can see it. Here we go. All right, so if I look at TaxJar now, I have, let's see, let me make this a little bigger. Okay. I have AR invoice 069885. I had a $20 package and I had some blades at $80, and here we go, my $80 blades, right? And my $20 pack, okay? And we had sales tax $5, and here it is in the system 069885. See here? Over here, 069885. Okay. The same works for like a credit. I could. Do this. Refresh this. Okay. So now if I come back here, you can see my credits are marked very clearly, and I have my CRM type, my credit memo, 069886. They're obviously using the same number sequence, 069886, but very simple. And it's not intrusive to the Acumatica process whatsoever.
Great.
So any questions so far?
How do you feel between this one and Avalara? Is this a cleaner? Is this kind of a cleaner application and everything from what you've been dealing with?
To be quite honest with you, you're asking the difference between like a Texas Instruments, a TI-80 or a TI-81 or whatever. I'm not going to comment on Avalara functionality versus TaxJar functionality. Most people that are using it, it's really coming down to price point. That would be what Jim tells me every time too. The cost to do the math is just less, significantly less. Jim?
Agreed. I mean, typically, TaxJar itself is between 60–70% less expensive compared to Avalara, of course, dependent upon the number of transactions that one does on a monthly basis. And every time we've done ours, with the cost of our interface plus the cost of TaxJar, we've never been over 50% less than the Avalara offering. So if Avalara is $20,000 a year because of the load, and they do it on, you have a minimum load that you sign up for the year, then it's some X value. If it's 10,000, we're like at 5. If it's 20, we're not over 10. And the price of our interface is it's typically, you're a small, so it'll be between $2,500, between $1,500 and $2,500 and $3,500 per year.
Okay, great. That's reasonable.
So that's the price of our interface, and then the TaxJar is really, again, dependent upon the number of transactions that you do.
Got it. Okay, so and it looks like the setup in the system and the operations within Acumatica itself is pretty straightforward. And then what you're showing us here is how it reports back up into TaxJar. Does TaxJar, do you know, and my accounting and compliance team on here too may know, does TaxJar help with filings within the area if we feed up all the information up to them?
Perfect. We have plenty of time.
Matt?
Trisha's nodding her head, yes.
Yeah, the answer is yes. That's a recent improvement in their offering. This time last year, the answer to that question was no, but now it's yes.
Okay, great. We can flesh that out with them and understand it better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
They're doing auto filings. The thing before that would be more difficult is you'd have to upload your non-taxable sales to get to your gross, because the states have a requirement they know what you actually sold, even if it was exempt. Gross sales versus taxable sales. Now with this new offering from TaxJar, we're actually going to be able to mark the customer in Acumatica as an exempt customer, have that push up to TaxJar automatically without you having to manage that in TaxJar. And really, at that point, the only thing you're doing is going up to TaxJar on a monthly basis, pulling down your number, making sure that it passes the sanity check with your sales total for that state in Acumatica. You're happy, and presumably you're going to hit autofile for $25.
And when it reports the taxes up to TaxJar, what status is the order in, or is the invoice in? Is it like the invoice has been generated and sent out, or the sales order has been closed?
It's created as soon as it's balanced. If anything happens to it, it's actually deleted from TaxJar. Once it's released, you obviously can't delete it. So as soon as an invoice is created, we do actually post to TaxJar. If you modify the invoice, it is updated in TaxJar. If you delete the invoice, it is removed from TaxJar. But all of that information is in TaxJar as soon as you create an invoice.
Great. Okay, good. I can see how it could definitely work within our retailers and everything space that have exemptions, as you're stating. That sounds to me like this could be a little bit more beneficial and a little bit better versus having to feed those up individually before the registrations go out or the filings happen.